Don't try to sneak into your room like that. I know what you've got behind your back. Records. More new records.
There it comes. Hey,
There we go. Hey,
how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'll say if you have a lot of calls worked out for this release for Bluesville, this is going to be very different from any of the others. There's no doubt it's going to be different.
Okay.
So, well, because, we have this history that goes back. So
Absolutely. Man.
let's talk about that for a minute. Right now with vinyl making a comeback and record store culture being touted by a lot of people saying, a record store is a great place to understand the culture of music. There was a culture back in 1969 in the late 60s at New England Music City and Cheap Thrills that really was an amazing thing, don't you think?
It was, and that was so much of my music education because the people that wanted to work in record stores back then often were really knowledgeable about one genre or another. So I learned about classical music and a lot more about jazz than I knew before. And I initially went to work at New England Music City when Rick Aliberti, the manager, whom I had known when he worked at another record store, wanted me to come and run the blues and the folk sections for him. So there was this idea that each person in the store sort of had a specialty, and what passion we had for the music too. And you never knew what was going to be played in the store. Later on, I think the store play was something that was bought and sold. But at that time, it was just wide open, just like radio was at the time. It was a great time to be learning about all of this music.
And look who came out of that store. I mean, aside from you and me to a lesser degree in terms of
Yeah,
what you've been doing, but Steve Berkowitz came out of that store.
sure.
Who else came out of that store?
Well, there's Ed Simkus, who's a journalist now. Quite a few people went on just to have major label sales and promotion jobs. Rick Aliberti, who was the manager of the store when I went to work there, I succeeded him in being the manager there. He had a long career in the mainstream record business. Who else was there? But I think John Ehrlich went on to lead a classical chorus. So he went from managing the record department to being a classical musician.
That's good.
Angie Jackson was a bass player. I think she ended up playing with Grover Washington Jr. Hayes Burnett, another bass player, played with Sun Ra for a while. So we had a lot of musicians in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It was a great time, and it's also great that it's made a comeback now, and that people consider
Sure.
record stores important places to go to find out about music and experience the culture of music and records. I think it's great.
Absolutely. You couldn't have predicted this resurgence in any way 20 years ago. It's just wonderful to see it.
Well, I did.
I know you did.
I did. And oh my God, what the nonsense I took. I was on Howard Stern's show in 2001, and I predicted it, and all hell broke loose. I don't even go into. I said in a few years, vinyl's making a big comeback, and everyone's going to be playing records. And you're crazy. You're out of your mind. Anyway, I probably am crazy and out of my mind, but for different reasons. So just why don't you fill viewers in on your history after leaving New England Music City? And of course, the guy that started it, Howie Ring, he died in a tragic car accident, which is
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, it was a great place to work. I ended up playing in a band while I was working at New England Music City, and I really couldn't keep up that 40, well, maybe 60 or 70 plus an hour week working at the store. And I'd known the founders of Rounder Records since they'd started the company. Three people who were really enthusiastic about traditional American music, and I actually went to work for them as a salesman, just because the hours were pretty flexible, and I would come into Boston and Cambridge and take inventories on Monday and Tuesday, and then go out on the road with the band. Wherever I went, I would sell records at whatever record store was around, and keep in touch with them by phone when I couldn't be there.
what year was that?
1976.
Oh, so you stayed on there long after I left. You were there
Yes.
for, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure the commercials suffered after I left, but
Oh, I'm sure the commercials went way downhill after you left. They were very funny and very clever. So I ended up working at Rounder, just doing a variety of things. And one of my passions had always been, or imagined passions was producing records. And that's ultimately what I ended up doing for Rounder. At one point, I was vice president of A&R, but I produced probably 170, 180
Wow.
blues, jazz, roots records now for Rounder and a number of other labels. I'm still doing it. I just got back from France, where I've been producing a band called the Skokian Brass Band. Very exciting fusion of New Orleans brass band, African brass band, and this kind of French sensibility. A very exciting project. So it's it was definitely where my passion led. I think I probably could have gone to work for a major label like some of the other people at New England Music City did, and maybe made more money at the time. But it's really been a career that fulfilled just about everything that I could have imagined that I might have wanted to do when I was 25 years old.
Now, you also played with a lot of musicians and played on a lot of records that you produce and maybe that others produce, right?
Yeah, occasionally. I mean, I try not to play on the records because then you start listening to yourself instead of the other musicians. But
You're honest about that, at least.
oh man, yeah. But every now and then, when somebody needed a harmonica solo, or Irma Thomas, or I would play. But really, I think being a producer, it's much better to be to stand back and just be the producer and let the other musicians play. Mm-hmm.
Probably a good idea. So let's so you've had a wonderful career in this, and you're still doing it, as I am, getting into elderly years for me. But
I suppose me too.
so let's talk about this project. So you were hired by or brought on board by Kraft to supervise, to curate this series of Bluesville records. Is that what's happening there?
Well, I left Rounder in 2017, I think, but I stayed on as a consultant for Kraft Recordings to manage the Rounder catalog, and it's grown into a bigger job than that just because Concord has acquired so many incredible labels over the years. Yeah. And if you think of the blues labels, I made a list here of let's see if I can find it. Yeah, the original Bluesville, which was a division of Prestige, Fantasy, High Tone, Rick and Ron, Riverside, Rounder, Savoy, Specialty, Stax, Telarx, Testament, Tricks, Vanguard, and VJ. I mean, it's that kind of acquisition. It kind of comes with a responsibility to curate it properly. So when Concord and Kraft Recordings is the catalog division of Concord Music, we all started thinking about this, and the idea came up to revive Bluesville as the umbrella label for all of these different holdings that Concord has. And the first two releases in the series are Skip James Today and then the John Lee Hooker Burning Hell. And the attempt here is to make the best quality record that has ever been made from the master tapes for these recordings. And that can be a journey just in trying to locate the best source, the best analog source that we can find for these. And luckily, these two had really good original tapes.
Now, did you release the Skip James record in stereo or mono? Do you remember?
I believe it's stereo. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is the way it was recorded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. So that'll be good because I know that there was a Vinyl Me Please did a box set of Vanguard. Wasn't he on? He was on Vanguard. That record was on Vanguard originally, and they did the mono one for some reason. I don't know why. But that's fantastic that you did that. And who is curating in terms of sound quality? Who is judging the test pressings and?
Well, these are being supervised. I mean, as you said, Matthew Luthans is doing the actual cutting of the vinyl, but Chad Kasem at Acoustic Sounds is kind of overseeing the whole thing, and pressings being done through Acoustic Sounds. So, it's being done on the best level possible. I mean, I would say, though, that the crucial step is making sure that original analog tape is in good shape and then cutting directly from that tape. And, that's sort of the gold standard for how to do it. And
I agree.
You've got to find that tape in order to do it, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, certain tapes have been lost and then found later.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember Joan Baez's debut album apparently the stereo tape was missing for a very long time, but they found it
Oh, wow.
recently.
Wow.
Not that it's a big wide recording because it's very simply Mike, her, and our guitar, but there's a space. I think it was recorded at the Manhattan Center in New York. So the stereo version has this big sense of space around her, and the mono, it collapses. And they found that I have an original, so I know what that sounds like. But
Oh, wow, okay.
of course I have all these originals. Of course I do.
That's great. That's
So how many other records in this series have you worked on?
Well, I've also been working a lot just on the overall Bluesville world, because at the same time we're putting out these LPs, we're putting together some playlists, and whether it be an introduction to Chicago blues or blues from Memphis or a themed playlist, finger picking guitar, I've been doing a lot of work on that. And there are also some records that are coming out now that maybe can't go on vinyl just because of the market that's there, but we're doing, again, a good mastering job in getting them back up on the streaming services.
Right.
So we just put out a Dr. Ross record that had been on Testament, and an Eddie Kirkland record, which had been on Prestige, a subsidiary called True Sound. So it's a bigger world, and I think the interesting thing for me is that working even with some of the young people who are doing the social networking outreach and so forth, this is all new to them.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I have to think twice about, well, everybody already knows this or that, but in fact, there's a whole new audience out there of listeners who really appreciate this music when they hear it. I mean, the focus is on the LPs. We have two new ones in the pipeline now. The Albert King Livewire Blues Power record, which was on Stax, came out in 1972. And Lightnin' Hopkins record with Sonny Terry on harmonica called Last Night Blues, which was recorded by Rudy Van Gelder
Oh,
in Jersey. Great rhythm section and beautiful, beautiful playing from Lightnin' Hopkins. And the spaciousness of the sound on this record is just amazing, as were many of Rudy Van Gelder's records.
it was done, and I was just in that studio a few weeks ago, and
Oh,
yeah, the sound that you hear there, I was there to see a Joe Lovano recording, actually, which was pretty cool. And when someone plays a saxophone live in that room, and then you go back and listen to records recorded in that room, you hear that same sound. It's just
yeah,
somewhat better live.
yeah.
So, just a quick question: I don't remember this? Did Kraft buy Rounder, or is that still independent?
Oh yeah, Craft Bot Rounder, yeah.
You've got a bunch of
That was how the connection was made in the first place. Yeah.
a lot of great records there.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure
It's Bobby and Terry with Ry Cooder. I remember that's a great one. That should
Oh
be
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
great sounding record, and that should come out again, I think, at some
It
point.
should. The list is getting longer and longer, believe me.
Another thing that happens, and I get this from my readers all the time, when a reissue comes, it goes, that again, I already have that. And I have to tell them, you're not the center of the universe. And what's great about what's happening is a lot of young people are getting into this now who don't have these records, even though they've been reissued a few times already. And so let's cut the labels a little bit of slack for reissuing things that have been reissued more than once.
Sure. No, and you're also somewhat limited by the source material. You want to put out your best sounding records on LP. I mean, that's part of the whole reason for doing it. And there have been a lot of sloppy reissues over the years too.
Tell me, it's more and more happening now. Unfortunately, the majors have this habit of, once something happens that is good, they find a way to ruin it. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. No one's curating. We need what you're doing for Kraft. We need that for every label out there who are doing reissues. Someone has to get in there before something comes out and listen to a test pressing or listen to even what the source is and say, no, don't do this, or this needs to be redone. But they're not doing it, unfortunately.
Yeah. This is a little tangent here, but 6 or 7 years ago, we made high-res digital transfers of everything that was on the Rick and Ron labels, which Rounder had bought back in the 80s. It was a small New Orleans label. Johnny Adams, Irma Thomas made their first recordings for Rick and Ron. And the analog tapes, which were on 7-inch reels, that was all either stereo or mono on 7-inch reels, were in the Rounder vault.
Oh,
And one day I was showing these to a recording engineer named Adam Jones, who worked with Paul Q. Koldery in Boston at his studio. And Adam just flipped out and says, "Oh my God, I will make you high-res digital transfers of these if I can just listen to them." And the interesting thing was that these tapes from the late 50s and early 60s were in pristine condition. There are many tapes from the 70s and 80s, of course, where the oxide starts to fall off.
of course.
So,
Well, if it was done on acetate,
Mhm.
those were great. All the I think Scotch 111 it was called is bulletproof. All the blue notes were done.
Sure.
The blue notes were done, and they sound fantastic. It's the later formulations on Mylar where it starts the glue starts to give way, and the backing it's a mess. Yeah, and they got to be baked and.
Oh yeah. So anyway, we made digital transfers of the entire Rick and Ron catalog and put them up on the streaming services.
Oh, cool.
And we put out a little box set of 10 45 RPM records of songs that had never been out before. So that was, there are little things like that are just so much fun. And putting up those 2-track tapes that probably hadn't been played since Rounder acquired them 25 or 30 years, and just to hear this beautiful, pristine sound, it's sometimes you surprise yourself with what you find and what you hear.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's still exciting. It's still great.
Yeah.
Okay. So this has been great. I think now people will understand what's coming, and this is going to go on as long as the records keep selling. You'll keep doing this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And keeping up with the playlists, I think, if anybody's on social media now who's expressed much interest in blues, I know I keep seeing these posts now. So I think the team at Kraft is doing a good job at outreach, and hopefully we'll bring more people into this world that they can appreciate these artists, the way these records were made, and hopefully it will be a very good experience for them. And when we're making the playlist too, it's not just stuff that Concord owns. We're including everything on them. So it's
that's great.
A very wide open initiative here.
And how is that listed? If you go to one of the streaming services, is it under Kraft? Is it under Bluesville, or is it under some other umbrella?
Oh, that's a good question, and I have to tell you, I believe it's under Bluesville. But there's a homepage for Bluesville on the Concord website. So I think if you go there, that will lead you in the right direction.
Okay, that's great. So I think what I'll do when I finish this, before I post this, I will put up a couple of New England Music City and Cheap Thrills radio commercials so people can
Oh, that's great.
I still hear from people. They find me on the internet and they go, "Are you the guy that did the commercial where you said?" And they remember things that I put in those commercials like from 50 years ago. It's really It's awesome. So Scott, it was great connecting up with you again after all these years. I think we've spoken back and forth by email, but I don't think we've actually.
Yeah.
All
It's
these
been
years.
a while.
A real long while. So it's great catching up with you again, and this is a great project. I'm so happy your name is attached to it, because I can't think of anybody who would do a better job on this and that knows more about this kind of music and has a great history. And so I'll stay in touch, and if you make any screw ups, I'll be sure to tell you first.
All right, thank you, Michael, so much. And man, it's wonderful to see your dream of the comeback of vinyl realized in such a huge way. You were right, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Scott. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hello, Cheryl. Hi, it's Debbie. Yeah, I got back last night. Oh, the weather in Miami was fantastic. Yeah, you'll never guess what. I ran into Seth from Camp Quaalude. He's still gorgeous. He got a red Camaro and everything. Yeah, 48th Street Beach. Listen, Cheryl, I gotta pick out what I'm gonna wear to school tomorrow. I got some dynamite crushed vinyl pantsuits. So listen, I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, I'm gonna die. I just broke a nail. Goodbye, Cheryl.
You voluptuous New York City.
No matter where you're from, you'll appreciate the following super specials from Music City and Cheap Thrills. New Paul Simon solo album, John Congo's and John Prine albums, $3.49 each. New Family, Clockwork Orange soundtrack, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Jerry Garcia albums, $3.69 each. Music City, 829 Boylston Street and Kenmore Square in Boston. Cheap Thrills, 1001 Mass Avenue, Cambridge, and in the Common Market, Alston. Well, it's halftime here at the first annual North-South American Standard Bowl. This is Howard Cosine with your analysis of the first half. The scoring began early as North tight end K.O. Pecte took the plunge from the 3-yard line. Place kicker Caesar Sharman from Flushing, New York, squeezed out the extra point despite a good rush from defensive center Pepe Bismal. A second scoring drive went down the drain as the North's offense simply seemed to run out of gas. We'll be back to today's exciting halftime show, the Army Marching Band recreating in song and dance the My Lai Massacre after this commercial message. Here's some super specials of unquestionable good taste at Music City and Cheap Thrills. The new Incredible String Band, John Congos and John Prine albums, $3.49 each. New Jerry Garcia, Yes, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, $3.69 each. At Music City, 829 Boylston Street and Kenmore Square in Boston. Cheap Thrills, 1001 Mass Avenue, Cambridge, and in the Common Market, Alston.
Mister, I'd like to buy that bird there.
Sure, Sonny, that'll be $2. Here you go.
Thank you, mister. Oh, boy, what a supreme bird. Tweet, 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 tweet. Mister, look, my bird kicked already.
Sorry, son. No guarantee on $2 birds.
Well then, mister, do you stuff birds?
Why, yes, we do.
Good, take this bird and stuff it up your ass.
Returning defective records at Music City and Cheap Thrills is no hassle at all. Just bring in the sales slip and the album. Super specials this week include David Bromberg, $2.99. Neil Young's new album, Harvest, $3.49. New Hendrix, America, John Prine, Jim Capaldi, Paul Simon, Alice Coltrane, Fairport Convention, and Jackson Browne, $3.69 each. Music City, 829 Boylston Street next to the Paris Cinema, and Kenmore Square. Cheap Thrills, 1001 Mass Avenue, Cambridge, and in the Common Market.